Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. We've got a SixLeaf knife again today. This is the SL-11 RattleSnake design, I think it is. Yeah, RattleSnake design. D2 steel. It's got like a bead blast. No, it's a stonewash finish. I think it's a stonewash finish. Looks like it's a gray wash. I think they put a coating on the blade and then put it through a stone tumbling system. And liner lock. It's a front flipper, and it's got a right side thumb stud. Right side only. If you're interested, we can talk about this knife over at the tabletop. We'll take a good close look at it and show you everything about it. Try to answer all your questions. If you do have any other questions, observations, statements, anything, leave them down in the comments. I read all the comments, and I respond to 99.9% of the comments. The odd time a comment slips through, probably for technical reasons, but I try to get through to everybody. So if you want to interact, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to become one of my supporters. You can go to patreon.com/CCE, or you can go down below the video. There's a little black button. It used to be blue. It's a black button with white letters, says join. It's right beside the subscribe button. Hit that join button, sign up to support the channel. Or there's also buymeacoffee.com/cutting edge, not Canadian Cutting Edge, just /cutting edge, where you can support the channel that way. And I'd appreciate all the help I get, because it's not free to make videos. It's free to upload videos to YouTube. It's far from free to make videos for YouTube. Unless I wanted to be just completely amateur and, steal all the knives that I get and, not use decent equipment to record, no lights or anything. It could be free, but in reality, it's not. Let's get to the tabletop and stop talking about that kind of stuff and focus on this knife. Keep watching. I should clearly state it is in stock while I'm recording this, and I'm recording this on December 2nd, 2022. The price of $35.99 with your 10% discount equals $32.39, around 45 Canadian dollars for this knife. Would this knife pass inspection if it was coming into Canada? It depends on the agent that you get. Since it's got a thumb stud, it might pass because it's a thumb stud knife. But since it's got that front flipper, they may or may not think, hey, that's a flipper, that's not allowed, that's super dangerous. It's way more dangerous to do that than it is to do that. Don't you know? You should know that. These are things that every person who knows anything about cutting implements should know. Danger is involved when you do that. It's so inherently risky compared to... Yeah, that's called sarcasm. As if you don't know. Size comparison with the Ontario Rat 1 right there. Lamp, these pivot pins, clearly it's a smaller knife, and we will go over all the dimensions, but let me tell you right now, this blade is the tiniest bit over 3 inches in the cutting edge, and it's a tiny bit more in the blade length. It's almost it's actually 3.14 inches. In the pictures from, even the White Mountain Knives website, it looks like this is sort of a gray-blue color. In real life, it looks like a brown with just a sort of a hint of green in it. So that's what it looks like to my eyes anyway. What do we got in the blade? We've got a drop point blade. Some might call it a spear point kind of blade. We got a swedge that comes along most of the length, but not quite to the tip. You've got that belly there and a bit of a straight section. We've got a slow plunge. That means the transition from the full thickness of the blade at the ricasso to the full thinness at the edge here on the main bevel. It's a long transition. And so this sharpener's choil is technically not quite big enough, but just visually, if you know, like from, a foot away looking at it, it looks okay. On the close-ups, you can see that sharpener's choil should have been probably a tiny bit bigger. Badging on the knife, we've got the logo there, the SixLeaf logo. It's on the main bevel, but there's no room really on the flats anywhere for it to be, so I'll let it pass, especially since it's not huge. And on this side, same thing, the RattleSnake, it's not huge, and they put it there. And then the SL-11 D2 is actually along the plunge section. It's pretty dark, but it's not huge. So I'm going to pass. I'll give it a pass, like a C, maybe even a C+ on the badging. It's a T6 right there to take that off. Everything else is a T8. How well does this blade perform in terms of cutting? Well, it's got a pretty good score in terms of sharpness, and it's got pretty standard grind angles. So, yeah, it's done fairly well. How about my practical test, my actual cutting with it? Yeah, I've done a whole bunch of cutting with this. It performs quite well. Nothing super exceptional, but certainly well within what you would expect a knife of this size to be able to cut. It's not thick behind the grind, and that really helps it an awful lot. If you want to change the grind angle, that thinness really helps you to get whatever angle you want without, ending up with a thick blade. So, yeah, the blade, I'm happy with it. The thumb stud, like I said, it's this one side only. We've got a cutaway here so you can get at that thumb stud with your right hand. And as I've shown you, it's not hard to get behind it. Now, it's close to hard, but it's just in the place where it's okay. If this was any further that way, this thumb stud, it would be terrible. The flipper tab, well, we've got jimping up the side, and it's a full front flipper, sticks out quite far. That can be a bother in your pocket. It's in your pocket and you've got this pokey end. It could cause problems in your pocket, but functionally very easy to use that front flipper. I'm not much of a reach over kind of guy. I just like using my thumb, and it works quite well, partly because the detent is so good. It's just dialed in just right, and a lot of reach. And then when the blade's deployed, you've got the jimping over here in the thumb rest area, and with that swedge, it's a little bit thinner there, but it's not too thin so that it's a bother to put your thumb there and push down to cut stuff, so that's okay. That's pretty much the blade. Lock up, pivot, all that stuff. We've got ball bearings in there. I will take it apart and show you, but we've got smooth action. Wants to shut. That's pretty good. No blade play, side to side, up and down when it's locked. That's a good thing. Lock up, the engagement is very much where I like it to be on a brand new knife. Lock release, again, this cutaway, we've got the tang of the liner lock. A lot of jimping on the side of it. Very easy to get in there and disengage that lock. I'm very happy with that. It's better than most knives. So that's quite good. I'm happy with that. Blade alignment when it's closed, pretty close to right down the middle, so I'm happy with that. So the pivot area is all quite good. We've got T8 screws on either side. When I take it apart, we'll see if it's a D-shaped pin or not. The balance point on this knife, well, let's do it this way, I guess. Right there. Now, I do wish it was a little more here, but this is a perennial issue with pocket knives. The balance point is often back here, about an inch after, well, maybe not quite an inch after the pivot pin. We've got stainless steel liners. They've also got this sort of gray wash treatment, and they are skeletonized. We've got a G10 back spacer. We've got a lanyard hole drilled all the way through at the back, and then these micarta scales, they're rounded all the way around, which is nice. Well, here they're rounded at the end here. That's a chamfer, but that's a chamfer back here too, but the edges of your grip, that's rounded nicely. Very comfortable in hand. It's not a coarse micarta. It looks like it might be, but it's fairly smooth, but not slick. And then we've got the standard pocket clip that SixLeaf knives have. SixLeaf is a budget brand from Tucson, and this is, or at least at the same factory. I don't know if it's official that it's their budget brand or not, but it really is. In terms of how these things are built, they're very much built like a Tucson. And their same pocket clip, which I tend not to like. It tends to be too big, and for this knife, yeah, that's too big. It just doesn't look quite right. But let's put it into a pocket and take a look at how it performs. Almost always they climb over very, very well like that. And there's lots of room between the screws and the surface there. And there you go. It's almost a full depth. There's just a tiny bit of the knife sticking out. And that big hole is a great place to put your thumb when you go to pull the knife back out. So functionally, the clip is a good clip. I'm just not fond of this particular clip. That is pretty much the overview of how it looks. I already talked about how well it cuts. So now it's time to take the thing apart and see how it's actually constructed. Here I've taken the pivot screw off, I've taken the pocket clips off, and there you've got a screw hidden behind it. That's also a T8, so let's take that off. And I think it's just spinning freely, isn't it? Try to put some pressure with this finger back here, and yes, that was enough. So it was free spinning. Oh, and that's the pin side. So I'll probably have to turn that around and put it in the other way when I put it back together again. And I tend to close knives when I take them apart because there's no pressure on the liner lock then. So let's wiggle this apart. Sometimes you can use a bit of plastic to pry in there to take them apart if need be, and this one is starting to behave like that. It doesn't want to come apart. So let me do that. What I don't like to do, is grab a screwdriver and start doing this kind of thing, like some guys do. You're just asking to scratch up the surfaces of everything on your knife, and that's no fun. I just happened to grab first this great big one. This is just a piece from a like an interior of a car removal kit. They sell kits where you've got parts to take apart car interiors. This is just a big one of those. And it just makes it easy to take things apart without risking scratches. So we've got phosphor bronze caged ceramic ball bearings. Very nice. We've got, I think that's micarta. From the look on the side of it, looks like there's fabric in there. And here's the skeletonizing on this side, none on the liner side. There you can really see that big jimping on the side of that lock release. And I don't see anything D-shaped there yet, so let's take this apart and push that back. And that's just press fit. It's very tight in there and it's round. Now this is the same as most SixLeaf knives that I've taken apart. It's that friction that they have in there that makes the screw come out instead of having this whole post spin, because it's really tight on that side. But on this side, it's not as tight. It's still tight, which is why I had to pry it loose with this, but it's not as tight. Stop pin is right there, put in place. Yeah, let's take that screw out of there because I want to put this post in on that side when I reassemble it. Very simple construction. Time to put it back together again and go over all the measurements. The weight of this knife, 106 grams, 3.74 ounces. The factory sharpness of this thing, 120 bests, just slightly better than average, so that's good. Lengths, the cutting edge length, 77.5 millimeters, 3.05 inches. Blade length, 79.7 millimeters, 3.14 inches, as I said earlier. The thickness of the blade stock, 3.13 millimeters, 0.1235 of an inch, so just slightly under an eighth of an inch. We can call it an eighth of an inch and be pretty fair. The blade depth, it's actually widest right about there, 24.4 millimeters, 0.96 of an inch, so mostly an inch. And then the thickness behind the grind, I said it was thin, 0.41 millimeters, 16,000ths of an inch. So thick enough to be robust. D2 can handle being, 16,000ths, so that's quite good. The grind angles, this side's got an average of 18.2 degrees. This side's got an average of 20.2 degrees. This side started at the heel at 20.3, ended at 20.1. So yeah, that's 0.2 degrees of change along the length. Very well sharpened. This side, it started at 18.4 degrees and went to 18 degrees, so that's 0.4 degrees of change. So yeah, this is one of the better sharpened knives that I've had. Being D2, EDC knife, even if I wanted this to be a hard use EDC knife, like I said, just barely at the right spot there. Sometimes when I'm not paying attention, looking at the camera or something, my thumb just slips over that, but so be prepared for that. But what I was talking about is it's well sharpened. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I'd probably sharpen it to 18 degrees per side, the first time it needs to be sharpened. That's what I would do on it, I think. Back to the measurements. The handle length, 104 millimeters, 4.09 inches. The grip area, it's right around 9.5 centimeters or 3 3/4 inches. The thickness on the micarta surface is 13.9 millimeters, 0.545 of an inch. Some might find that a little thick, but I find it very well done. And the pocket clip, I didn't talk about if it's hot in the hand or not. It's not. It's not hot in the hand. Even in the left hand, it feels okay. Better in the right, though. The handle depth, that's this measurement. How wide is it within the grip? Of course, it's biggest on this end, 24.7 millimeters, 0.974 of an inch. When the knife is closed, the widest point, you'd think it's here, but it's not. It's right about here, 28.6 millimeters, 1.13 inches. And the total length of this thing, 184 millimeters, 7.24 inches. So basically 7.25 inches. So it is on the smaller side, but it's not a small knife. What are my final thoughts on this thing? What's my summary? It's not great, but it's pretty good. If you're left-handed, you're probably going to say no to this thing. There's no left pocket clip option. There's no left thumb stud. Now, you could, of course, open it with your left hand using, the front flipper. And, I wouldn't mind this in my left pocket. I prefer it in my right pocket, but I don't mind it in my left pocket. It's a little safer in the right pocket, especially when you put it, in right here. If the pocket clip is worth anything, then the blade can't open up. You can't cut yourself with the blade opening. So a lot of people are scared of knives opening up, and it can be a legitimate concern. Imagine this is on the right side. Something got hooked on that thing and opened it up, and then you jab your hand in there. Yeah, that's a little scary. So generally, it's not a problem. And I've never been cut that way. Some people have been. Just make sure your detent is in good condition and your knife won't open easily. That's a big thing. And like I showed, snug it up to the side where it should be. So this is basically a right side only carry kind of knife. It's comfortable. It feels good. The blade shape is very useful. You got sort of a spear point kind of tip there. Thin, good for slicing, cutting. Not great for piercing. In case you're piercing into something, and you come to a sudden stop, your hand might slide over that edge, and that's not good. But other than that, I'm happy with this thing. It feels good, looks good, doesn't look special at all. The lanyard hole here is big enough for 550 paracord, but just barely. And I wish they would have chamfered the edges of that hole, but not a big deal. I don't use lanyards, so at least 99% of the time I don't use lanyards on pocket knives. I do use lanyards with fixed blades, though. So there you go. It's, a budget kind of knife at a budget kind of price with, pretty good quality. Actually, very good quality for what you get. That's my opinion. If you have one, let us know what you think of yours down below. If you have any other questions or comments, like I said before, please leave them in the comment section. Leave your questions there, and I'll answer them. Thank you to my supporters. You guys are stunning. I'm going to do a separate announcement video this month for who the winner for my Patreon and YouTube membership supporters is, and I'll let you know that way. But always remember, cut towards your chum, not your thumb.